social media superstar, the renowned content creator, the serial risk taker, and undefeated fighter, introducing the problem child, Jake Paul!
Julio Cesar Chavez Jr.
That's all good. That ain't gonna do nothing. You're doing really good. All right.
Before the fight was the early rounds could be decisive, and it is quite clear.
Leyenda continúa. Julio Cesar Chavez Jr.
Without getting effort by both guys, nothing was left in the corners, nothing was left in the gym.
Overall, Jake, how'd you feel in there?
I just felt flat, man. Not my best performance. I guess that happens in the sport. You know, you got to peak right at the right moment. You only get one night, one chance, and I messed that up, I guess. But didn't think I'd ever have to make one of these videos, but it happens, I guess. This is still the best job in the world. Thank you all for the support. This was an amazing event, and I'll be back. No worries, cuz.
I feel Jake. I know there was a lot of talk about him and his power. You took his shots pretty well and you knocked him down.
No, his power wasn't that crazy. He just had good speed, good combinations, but Anderson and Tyron hit really hard, so I was used to that.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Boxing, man. You got to take it on the chin, but it was good. Some good moments in there. I just really couldn't get my game plan working. But hey, man, this is what the sport's all about. You win some in glorious fashion, and you lose some. And like I said out there, judge me about my losses because I'll be back. You know, I think he was just really well prepared, and I think it was more so.
Jake Paul and Julio Cesar Chavez Jr.'s fight is only a few days away. Expectations for their selection of Jake were raised when DAZN Boxing published an exclusive of the pair with in-person conversations with notable guests. The 28-year-old fighter Jake captivated Paul Sarukian, who claimed that it's difficult to start boxing so late and yet demonstrate skill. The UFC fighter was impressed by Jake Paul's desire to prove everyone wrong, but what really shocked him was his agility and mobility despite his size. "I'm surprised how big he is. He's so big and hits so hard," he said, asserting that he moves like a real boxer and believes that Paul is prepared for the weekend and will win. Given the statistics, it is difficult to believe that anyone would bet on Jake Paul to defeat Chavez. However, given the performance of the Mexican fighter and the evolution of his recent bouts, one could definitely make a case for the YouTuber-turned-boxer. A few days ago, the 52-year-old boxer decided to spice up the fight in typical Golden Boy fashion. Golden Boy Promotions director Oscar de la Hoya will be closely watching the Paul vs. Chavez Jr. fight after both of his fighters, Gilberto Ramirez and Floyd Sheffield, will be competing on the undercard. Meanwhile, Arman Sarukian is not the only combat sports icon who supports Paul in the June 28th showdown. A 6th Division World Boxing Champion recently shared a shocking prediction that shocked everyone. It's fight week, and de la Hoya gave his predictions for the whole event. "Now, let me offer my predictions for Jake Paul versus Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. the Golden Lad Look Baby," he added, removing his robe as he made all of his underwear predictions for the undercard. Curial, Raul his favorites were Floyd Schofield and Zordo Ramirez, but things took a turn for the worse when it came to picking the main event. Following a back-and-forth fight, Jake Paul emerged victorious by split decision in the 12th round, and de la Hoya declared Jake Paul the favorite. Jake Paul's boxing experiment continues on Saturday, when the social media sensation-turned-fighter takes on former middleweight champion Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. This is Paul's second straight fight against a former world champion after defeating 58-year-old Mike Tyson in November. Even at his best, Chavez never came close to living up to the legacy of his father's amazing career and was frequently mired in controversy and afflicted by self-inflicted problems. He is only 39 years old, not 58, and more than 10 years removed from his days as a prominent top-tier boxer. No, I don't think he's good. I think he trains hard, but he's not a good fighter. At the last news conference, Chavez Jr. stated, "I don't think he's a good boxer, and everybody knows that. If he were, everyone else on stage would be a legend." In a sense, this makes Chavez the ideal opponent for Paul since, after overcoming fellow influencer Oni Sunjib to begin his professional career, Paul has continued to perform quite well despite feasting on competitors who are far beyond their prime. After Paul defeated retired basketball star Nate Robinson, he engaged in a series of bouts with former UFC competitors, including Ben Askren. Anderson Silva, following a close split decision loss against Tommy Fury, and Tyron Woodley. Twice Paul's victory over Nate Diaz marked a successful comeback for the former UFC fighter. Paul attempted a few bouts with actual boxers Andre August and Ryan Borland, defeating both club fighters in the opening round. These bouts were reasonable for the majority of professional fighters, with fewer than 10 fights in their careers, but the lack of name value caused little public interest, which prompted Paul to return to facing a former UFC competitor in before facing Tyson, and earning a huge box office. Mike Perry. Paul beat the bare-knuckle fighter to win his 7th career stoppage. However, the bout was a disappointingly dull one, with Paul safely outboxing Tyson, and mostly acting as though he didn't want to harm the legend. This leads us to Paul versus Chavez. In addition to being far past his peak and undersized for a cruiserweight bout, Chavez possesses name value, boxing experience, and a previous championship. He's a great fighter. I like big names, legendary names, and he's on my path to a world championship, Chavez says. This is a tough test, a very tough test, but I'm here to challenge myself and do big things in this sport, and then make a title run after I beat him on Saturday, to his credit, Paul stated during the last news conference. Paul was on the verge of agreeing to a fight with Saul Canelo Alvarez before it was revealed that Alvarez had used him as leverage before agreeing to a 3-fight deal with Riyadh Season. Now, we're back to the typical Paul fight, though one that may be a little riskier than previous UFC fighters, because Chavez, no matter how faded, has spent the majority of his life training to compete in the boxing ring. That's all for now. For the best updates on news moments, events, and happenings in the boxing world, follow us on YouTube, and remember to enable notifications so you can be informed when we release high-quality content like this. Until next time, peace.